Thanks, Jeremy, for sharing that. That reminded me of something I heard at one of the Bangalore conference messages, that most people who believe in Jesus they don't want to sin. They struggle with major sins that they have, but it's very rare to find a Christian who is totally all about deep, intimate relationship with Jesus. And so that kind of opened my eyes to question, make sure that I'm not just about what Jesus would have me do and not do, but about himself. And so thanks for sharing that. God encouraged me with some things recently about making decisions about certain things that are coming up in my future. There's a lot of important decisions we have to make in life all along the road. From when we're a kid, we have to decide what we're going to do, our career path, who we're going to marry, if we want to have kids, how many kids we're going to have, and list goes on and on. Where to go to church, who our friends are going to be, where to spend our time, where we're going to move. Like a lot of important decisions. And I know that God is in control, and a lot of times He blocks our path. We've all heard the joke. How do you make God laugh? Tell him you have plans. So we think things are under control, but they really aren't. But He does give us, I feel like He does give us some say on where our life is going to go. We can ask Him for things, and a lot of times He does grant them. But He showed me a couple of things about making decisions that I was blessed by, that I want to keep for myself with regard to this experience of the decision I have that's coming up. And so the first thing He showed me was don't worry about making decisions too far ahead of time. A lot of times we can worry about things that we never even need to worry about later. They just work themselves out. But making decisions too far ahead of time is sometimes an indicator of a lack of faith. Like, for example, some decisions I have to make now, like, how much should I save for my retirement? I think it's important to save for our retirement, like how much money should I put away? That's a decision I have to make now, but I don't have to make a decision, what age should I retire, or where am I going to live? What am I going to do when I retire? Because that's that's not only maybe unbelief and maybe is God going to do something for me in the future? Is He going to let me retire? But it's also maybe presumption, saying, look, I just assume I'm going to retire. Like, I'm going to work it out so I can. A lot of times that making decisions ahead of time can indicate one or the other, lack of faith or like presumption. And so James 4:13 through 16 says, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You're just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil." So I want to be careful that I'm not just assuming that I can control things, but always submitting things to God's hands with regard to decisions. And then the second thing that God encouraged me with is don't make decisions based on fear. And I've noticed a tendency sometimes when there's something I really care about to try to make it to try to hedge my my future, in the sense, like, try to make sure that everything works out fine by analyzing every little detail of a situation, and then sometimes refraining from taking certain steps because I'm afraid that disaster is going to strike. And I saw that is unbelief too, and I was just feeling convicted. Lord, forgive me for my unbelief. Like, a lot of times I'll fear taking a step just because I'm like, oh, what if a disaster happens? But I need to keep in my mind that our God is a loving, merciful Father who can, even if there's like nothing in front of me, He can put a step there in front of me that's the right step. And so fear of the consequences and fear of making the wrong decision. I don't need to be asking what if all the time. What if this happens? I remember there's a verse in Proverbs that says the sluggard says there's a lion in the streets. So it's almost like I can't do this, I can't do that. What if we get eaten? But people who live like this will never have peace, and aren't seeing God's love. So I want to be somebody that always sees God's love. And I remember having a meeting with Brother Zach one time, asking, what if such and such happens in the future? And what he did was he pointed me to a promise in the Bible, one of God's promises, and it had a condition on it, like most of God's promises. And I saw that what I should be doing is not asking, what if God doesn't keep his promise? I should be saying, what do I do so that I fulfill the conditions of this promise? Because if the what if question is a horrible question, because it's like saying God's not dependable. I guess in one sense, faith is it's what I'm saying about God. If I have unbelief, it's saying God can't really be trusted. And so it's just sobering to me to think that my faith kind of says what I believe about God, what I testify about God. And most of the time, I'm not asking, what if God can't do something? Like, I know God is powerful and he could do anything I want, or he wants, I mean. But most of the time I'm questioning myself, what if God doesn't want to do this? I know he has so many other things on his plate and so many other plans. Maybe he just doesn't want to answer my prayer. It's not that God is too weak, it's just maybe he's too stingy, that kind of thing. And so I saw that that's unbelief too. I know that God is powerful, but like to question his mercy is also unbelief, and his grace. And so I was just thinking that I have to have full confidence, not only in God's power, but also his mercy, that he's a merciful, loving God who controls everything. And earlier in September, Isaac, my son, was sick. He got sick right before his third day of school, because he had to miss his second day of school because we were out of town. And he was getting really sick the day before. I was like, he's going to have to miss another day of school. And I was like, if he misses too many in the beginning, they can kick him out because there's people on the waiting list. And so I prayed to God that God would heal him. And I just had peace that God was saying, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. He's going to be healed. And it's not that like I was claiming health and wealth. Like I hate prosperity preaching. Like, name it and claim it. You can be rich if you ask God. Just if you're not getting healed, that means you don't have enough faith. I think that's really horrible preaching to that's truth that's not in the Bible, or that's not truth that's in the Bible. But I just felt like this was something material, like it was that I just had peace for, because I just saw God as a merciful Father. And I didn't feel convicted like, oh, this is prosperity preaching that you're believing in. I just felt God's a merciful Father. I think he's going to heal Isaac. And so I had peace about it, and he did. He healed him by the next day. And I was comforted by a word in the Bible in Hebrews 11 that said that Abraham, because he considered God faithful, he assumed that he was going to raise Isaac from the dead. Because God told Abraham, kill your son, the promise that I gave you. And so Abraham was going to go do it. But it said in Hebrews 11, let me see if I can find the verse here. I think it's in the middle somewhere. 19, Hebrews 11:19. He considered that God is able to raise people even from the dead, from which he also received him back as a type. So God saw, even though it wasn't true what Abraham believed something that wasn't true. But the reason why he believed it is because he saw God as faithful and merciful. And so God counted that to him as faith. And so, I felt peace. Like, if the motivation that I'm believing God for something is because I see him as a merciful God, even if I'm wrong, maybe God won't answer my prayer, but that's okay. If it was driven by a heart that sees God as such a loving, merciful Father, then that's a good thing. And so, those are a couple of things that I was encouraged by with regard to making decisions and plans to not ask what if, but to trust God, pray in faith, remembering how merciful and loving Father he is.